Zix stood before the shimmering portal, its translucent body pulsing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The swirling vortex of blue and white energy represented more than just a means of interstellar travel. It was a gateway to a new world, a new culture, and a journey that would change Zix's life forever. "Are you ready, Delegate Zix?" The Elder Luminan's telepathic voice resonated in Zix's mind, a comforting presence amidst the chaos of emotions. Zix's tendrils swayed gently, a gesture of affirmation in Luminan body language. "As ready as I'll ever be, Elder Vox," it transmitted back, "though I must admit my central core pulses with uncertainty." Elder Vox's form shimmered with understanding. "That is natural, young one. You are about to embark on a journey no Luminan has undertaken before. Remember, you carry with you not just your own aspirations, but the hopes of our entire species for greater understanding and cooperation with the humans." Zix absorbed the Elder's words, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over it like a comforting blanket. It was true. This wasn't just a personal adventure. As the first Luminan to participate in the newly established interplanetary exchange program with Earth, Zix was a pioneer, an ambassador, and a student all rolled into one. "I will do my best to represent Lumina with honor," Zix transmitted, its body glowing with determination. Elder Vox's form rippled with approval. "I have no doubt you will. Now let us review the key points one last time." Zix's tendrils curled inward, a gesture of concentration. Earth is a planet of great diversity, both in its ecosystems and its dominant species, humans. Humans communicate primarily through audible speech and have not developed telepathic abilities. They are emotional beings, often driven by feelings as much as logic. Their society is complex, with many different cultures and beliefs coexisting, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. "Excellent. Elder," Vox transmitted. "And your mission?" "My mission is threefold," Zix continued. "First, to study at a human university, learning about their culture, history, and sciences firsthand. Second, to serve as a cultural ambassador, sharing knowledge about Lumina and our ways with the humans I encounter. And third, to evaluate the potential for further cooperation and exchange between our worlds." "Very good." Elder Vox's approval radiated through the telepathic link. "And the most important rule?" Zix's form pulsed with seriousness. "Under no circumstances am I to reveal the full extent of Luminan telepathic abilities. Humans are to believe our telepathy is limited to communication only." "Correct," Elder Vox transmitted. "We do not yet know how humans would react to the knowledge that we can sense their thoughts and emotions. It is a precaution for both your safety and the success of the program." Zix's tendrils waved in understanding. The concept of keeping secrets was foreign to Lumin culture, where the free exchange of thoughts and feelings was the norm. But Zix understood the necessity. Humans were still an unknown quantity in many ways, despite years of distant observation. Now, Elder Vox transmitted, its telepathic voice taking on a softer tone. "Do you have any last questions before you depart?" Zix hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Elder, how will I know if I'm doing the right thing? Everything will be so different, so alien. How can I be sure I'm making the correct decisions?" Elder Vox's form shimmered with what Zix recognized as the Luminan equivalent of a reassuring smile. "Trust in your training, young one, but also in your instincts. You were chosen for this mission not just for your academic excellence, but for your adaptability and empathy. Remember, the goal is understanding. Approach each situation with an open mind and a willingness to learn. And you will find your way." Zix absorbed the Elder's words, feeling a sense of calm settle over it. "Thank you, Elder Vox. I am ready." With a final telepathic farewell, Zix turned towards the portal, taking the equivalent of a deep breath. Though Luminans didn't breathe in the human sense, Zix extended its tendrils and glided into the swirling vortex. The journey through the portal was both instantaneous and eternal. Zix felt its consciousness stretch and compress, as if the very fabric of space-time was being folded around it. Then, with a sudden lurch, it was over. Zix found itself in a small, enclosed space, a specially designed arrival chamber in the Earth University's Xenobiology department. The room was bathed in a soft purple light that approximated the bioluminescence of Lumina, a thoughtful touch that immediately made Zix feel more at ease. A door slid open and two figures entered. One was clearly human, a tall, slender female with dark skin and curly hair tied back in a complex pattern. The other was, well, Zix wasn't quite sure. It appeared to be a mobile metal construct, roughly humanoid in shape, but with multiple appendages and a glowing central eye. "Welcome to Earth, Delegate Zix," the human said, her voice soft and melodious. "I'm Dr. Amelia Chen, head of the Xenobiology department, and your faculty advisor during your stay with us. And this," she gestured to the metal construct, "is Artie, our artificial research and teaching intelligence. He'll be your guide and assistant as you acclimate to life on our campus." Zix's tendrils waved in what it hoped was a greeting. "Greetings, Dr. Chen and Artie," it transmitted, the words appearing as text on a small device Dr. Chen held. "I am honored to be here and eager to begin my studies." Dr. Chen's face broke into a wide smile, revealing a row of white teeth. Zix, remembering its cultural briefing, forced itself not to recoil at what its instincts still registered as a potential threat display. "Wonderful," Dr. Chen exclaimed. "We're thrilled to have you here, Zix. Now, I'm sure you must be feeling a bit overwhelmed after your journey. Artie will show you to your quarters where you can rest and acclimate. We've prepared a special living space that should approximate conditions on Lumina as closely as possible. Tomorrow, we'll begin your orientation and get you settled into your classes." Artie stepped forward, its central eye pulsing gently. "Greetings, Delegate Zix," it said, its voice a pleasant gender, neutral tone. "If you'll follow me, I'll guide you to your living quarters and provide you with all necessary information for your stay." As Zix followed Artie out of the arrival chamber, it couldn't help but marvel at the sights, sounds, and sensations bombarding its senses. The corridors were a riot of colors, far more vibrant than the subtle bioluminescence of Lumina. Sounds echoed from all directions. Footsteps, voices, the hum of machinery, and the smells. Zix's olfactory sensors were working overtime trying to process the myriad of new scents. "I detect elevated levels of stress in your bioluminescent patterns," Artie commented as they walked. "This is quite normal for new arrivals. Might I suggest a moment of meditation? I can provide appropriate auditory stimuli if you wish." Zix's tendrils curled in surprise. "You can interpret my bioluminescence," it transmitted. "Affirmative," Artie replied. "My programming includes extensive data on luminin physiology and communication. I am capable of basic bioluminescent communication, though I lack the complexity of a true luminan." Zix felt a wave of relief wash over it. Having someone, or something, that could understand its natural form of expression was immensely comforting. They arrived at a door that slid open at their approach. Inside was a spacious room dimly lit with the same purple bioluminescent light as the arrival chamber. The floor was covered in a soft, spongy material that reminded Zix of the nutrient-riche substrates of Lumina. One wall was entirely taken up by what appeared to be a large screen. "These are your quarters," Artie explained. "The environmental controls can be adjusted to your preferences. The wall screen can display various scenes from Lumina for your comfort, as well as serve as an information terminal and communication device. The gelatinous pool in the corner is for rest and nutrient absorption, formulated to match luminin biochemistry." Zix glided over to the pool, dipping a tendril in. It was perfect, the exact temperature and mineral composition its body craved after the stresses of interstellar travel. "Thank you, Artie," Zix transmitted. "This is most comfortable." "I'm glad you find it satisfactory," Artie replied. "Now, would you like me to go over your schedule for tomorrow, or would you prefer some time to rest and acclimate?" Zix's form pulsed with fatigue. "I think rest would be best. Can we discuss the schedule in the morning?" "Of course," Artie said. "I'll return at 800 hours to begin your orientation. Sleep well, Delegate Zix." As Artie left, Zix sank into the nutrient pool, feeling its body begin to absorb the much-needed minerals and compounds. As it relaxed, Zix reflected on the whirlwind of experiences it had already encountered in its short time on Earth. The journey had only just begun, and already it was proving to be more exciting and overwhelming than Zix had ever imagined. With a final pulse of its bioluminescence, a luminin expression of contentment, Zix allowed itself to drift into a restful state, eager for what the next day would bring. The gentle pulsing of bioluminescent light roused Zix from its rest cycle. For a moment, disorientation set in as unfamiliar sensations bombarded its consciousness. Then memory rushed back. The portal, the arrival on Earth, the strange new environment. A soft chime sounded, followed by Artie's voice. "Good morning, Delegate Zix. It is 755 hours. I hope you had a restful night. May I enter to begin your orientation?" Zix emerged from the nutrient pool, its body gleaming with renewed energy. "You may enter, Artie," it transmitted. The door slid open, and Artie glided in, its central eye glowing softly. "I trust you found your accommodations satisfactory," the AI inquired. "Most satisfactory," Zix replied. The nutrient pool was particularly rejuvenating. "Excellent," Artie said. "Now, shall we begin your orientation? We have much to cover before your first class at 1300 hours." Over the next few hours, Artie guided Zix through a comprehensive orientation. They covered everything from the layout of the campus to human social customs, from the structure of classes to the nuances of human nonverbal communication. Zix's mind reeled with the sheer volume of information, but it was determined to absorb as much as possible. "Now," Artie said as they concluded the orientation, "do you have any questions before we proceed to the campus tour?" Zix's tendrils waved thoughtfully. "I'm curious about the other students. Will they all be human?" "Negative," Artie replied. "While the majority of students are human, the university has a small but growing population of extraterrestrial students. You are the first Luminin, but there are representatives from several other species participating in the Interplanetary Exchange Program." This news both relieved and excited Zix. The prospect of meeting other non-human species was thrilling, and it hoped that their presence might make its own integration smoother. As they left Zix's quarters and began the campus tour, the Luminin was once again struck by the sensory overload of the human world. The corridors were bustling with activity, students rushing to classes, faculty members engaged in animated discussions, and various service robots zipping about on their programmed tasks. Zix noticed that its presence was causing quite a stir. Humans stopped and stared, some with expressions of awe, others with barely concealed unease. Zix tried to remember its training on human facial expressions, but the sheer variety was overwhelming. "Artie," Zix transmitted, "the humans seem very interested in my presence. Is this normal?" "Affirmative," Artie responded. "While the university has hosted extraterrestrial students before, your species is new to most of the student body. Curiosity is a fundamental human trait. However, if their attention makes you uncomfortable, I can request that they disperse." Zix's tendrils waved in a negative gesture. "No, that won't be necessary. Fostering understanding is part of my mission here. Perhaps this is an opportunity. With that, Zix glided towards a group of students who had been watching its progress down the hallway. As it approached, some of the students took a step back, while others leaned in with obvious curiosity. "Greetings," Zix transmitted, the words appearing on the public display screens that dotted the hallway. "I am Zix, exchange student from the planet Lumina. Might I inquire about your areas of study?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, a young woman with vibrant blue hair stepped forward. "Hi, Zix," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "I'm Lena. I'm studying xenobiology. It's so cool to meet you. Can I ask you some questions about luminin physiology?" Before Zix could respond, a tall young man interjected, "Whoa. Lena, give the alien a break. It just got here." He turned to Zix. "I'm Miguel, computer science. Welcome to Earth University." Zix's body pulsed with a soft blue light, a lumin expression of pleasure. "I would be happy to answer questions about my physiology, Lena, though perhaps at a later time when we can speak more in depth. Miguel, I'm quite interested in your field of study. Do you work with Artie?" As the conversation flowed, more students gathered around, each introducing themselves and asking questions. Zix found itself engaged in discussions ranging from luminin culture to Earth's climate, from interstellar travel to university cuisine. Artie stood by, its central eye pulsing with what Zix had come to recognize as approval. After about 15 minutes, the AI gently interrupted. "I apologize for the interruption, but we must continue our tour if Delegate Zix is to be prepared for their first class." The students expressed disappointment but understanding. As Zix prepared to leave, Lena spoke up. "Hey, Zix, a bunch of us usually study together in the xenobiology lab after classes. Would you like to join us sometime?" Zix's body shimmered with excitement. "I would be honored," it transmitted. "Perhaps after my classes today?" Agreements were made. Contact information exchanged. With Artie's help, and Zix continued its tour with a new spring in its glide. Its first real interaction with human students had gone better than it could have hoped. The rest of the tour passed in a blur of new sights and information. Artie showed Zix the various academic buildings, the libraries, both physical and virtual, the recreation areas, and the dining facilities. By the time they reached the xenobiology department where Zix's first class was to be held, the Luminon's mind was swimming with information. "We have arrived at your first class location," Artie announced. "Introduction to Earth Sciences with Dr. Chen. Are you prepared, or do you require a moment to compose yourself?" Zix's tendrils waved in a gesture of determination. "I am ready," it transmitted. As they entered the lecture hall, Zix was struck by the variety of beings present. While the majority were human, it could see several other species it recognized from its briefings. A group of Arcturians with their characteristic crystalline bodies, a Zorlak with its multiple eye stalks, and even a Vexlor, its gaseous form contained within a specialized environment suit. Dr. Chen stood at the front of the room, her face lighting up as she saw Zix enter. "Ah, Delegate Zix. Welcome. Please, come to the front. I'd like to introduce you to the class." Zix glided forward, acutely aware of the many eyes, human and non-human alike, following its progress. As it reached Dr. Chen, it turned to face the class, its tendrils waving slightly in a gesture of greeting. "Class, Dr." Chen began, her voice carrying easily through the lecture hall. "I'd like you all to welcome our newest exchange student, Delegate Zix from the planet Lumina. Zix is the first of its species to study on Earth, and we're honored to have it join our Introduction to Earth Sciences course." A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. Zix noticed some students leaning forward with interest, while others seemed to shrink back slightly. The diversity of reactions was fascinating to observe. "Zix," Dr. Chen continued, "would you like to say a few words to the class?" Zix's body pulsed with a soft blue light, a luminant expression of affirmation. It transmitted its thoughts, which appeared as text on the large screen behind Dr. Chen. Greetings, fellow students. I am honored to be here among you. Lumina and Earth may be vastly different worlds, but we share a common thirst for knowledge. I look forward to learning from all of you as much as I hope to share insights about my own world and culture. The class broke into applause, a human custom that Zix found both startling and oddly pleasing. The vibrations created by the collective clapping sent ripples through its gelatinous form, creating an unexpected but not unpleasant sensation. As the applause died down, a human student near the front raised her hand. Dr. Chen, can we ask Zix some questions? Dr. Chen looked to Zix, who pulsed its agreement. Very well. Dr. Chen said, but let's keep it brief. We do have a lesson to get through today. Hands shot up across the room. Dr. Chen pointed to a young man with bright red hair. Yes, Trevor? Zix, Trevor began, his voice tinged with excitement. What's the gravity like on Lumina? Is it hard for you to move around here on Earth? Zix's tendrils waved as it formulated its response. Lumina's gravity is approximately 0.8 times that of Earth. While the difference is noticeable, it is not significantly challenging. My species' natural buoyancy allows us to adapt quite easily to different gravitational conditions. More hands went up. Dr. Chen pointed to an Arcturian student, its crystalline body refracting the light in mesmerizing patterns. Zix. The Arcturian's voice chimed like bells. How do luminans reproduce? Are there distinct genders in your species? Zix's body flickered with a pattern that, had there been other luminans present, would have been recognized as mild embarrassment. Luminin reproduction is quite different from many species. It transmitted carefully. We do not have distinct genders. Instead, when conditions are right, a luminin can divide into two identical offspring, each retaining the memories and knowledge of the parent. This revelation caused a stir in the class. Zix could hear whispered conversations and saw several students furiously taking notes. Dr. Chen held up a hand to quiet the class. One more question, then we really must begin our lesson. She pointed to a Zorlak student, its eye stalks swiveling to focus on Zix. Is it true that luminans are telepathic? The Zorlak asked, its translator rendering its complex vocalizations into English. Zix pulsed a soft green, a luminant expression of caution. It remembered Elder Vox's warning about not revealing the full extent of luminin telepathic abilities. Luminans do possess a form of telepathic communication. It transmitted carefully. However, it is limited to the transmission of thoughts we choose to share. We cannot read minds in the way some of your science fiction might depict. This wasn't entirely true, of course. Luminin telepathy was far more advanced, allowing for the sensing of emotions and with concentrated effort, even the reading of surface thoughts. But Zix knew the importance of keeping this information confidential, at least for now. Dr. Chen clapped her hands together. Thank you, Zix, for those fascinating insights. Now, let's begin our lesson. Today, we'll be discussing the formation of Earth's atmosphere and how it compares to other planets in our solar system and beyond. As Zix took a seat, or rather positioned itself in a specially designed containment field that allowed it to sit comfortably, it felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The class had shown great interest in its presence, which was encouraging, but it also realized the challenge ahead. Not only did it have to learn about Earth, but it also had to navigate the complex social dynamics of a multi-species classroom. The lesson proceeded, with Dr. Chen expertly weaving together information about Earth's atmosphere, with comparisons to other known planets. Zix found itself fascinated by the complexity of Earth's atmospheric layers and the delicate balance that allowed for such a diverse range of life forms. As Dr. Chen explained the role of the ozone layer in protecting Earth from harmful ultraviolet radiation, Zix raised a tendril to indicate it had a question. "Yes, Zix," Dr. Chen acknowledged. "I'm curious," Zix transmitted. "How do Earth's plants and animals cope with the variations in atmospheric pressure and composition at different altitudes? On Lumina, our atmosphere is much more uniform." Dr. Chen's face lit up at the question. "Excellent inquiry, Zix. This touches on a fascinating area of Earth biology." As Dr. Chen launched into an explanation of altitude adaptation in Earth species, Zix noticed several of its classmates nodding appreciatively at its question. It felt a warm glow of satisfaction. It was contributing to the class's learning experience, not just absorbing information. The rest of the class passed quickly, with Zix alternating between taking notes, using a specialized data pad designed for its non-humanoid appendages, and asking questions. By the time Dr. Chen wrapped up the lesson, Zix's mind was buzzing with new information and ideas. "All right, class," Dr. Chen said as she concluded. "For next time, I want you to prepare a short presentation on the atmosphere of your home planet, or for our Earth students. Choose any exoplanet we've discussed. Zix, I'm particularly looking forward to hearing about Lumina's atmosphere." As the class began to disperse, Zix found itself surrounded by a small group of students, both human and non-human. "That was a great question about altitude adaptation," said a human student. Zix recognized as Lena from their earlier encounter. "I'm doing my thesis on comparative xenobiology. Would you be willing to talk more about luminin physiology sometime?" Before Zix could respond, the Arcturian student chimed in, its crystalline form shimmering with excitement. "I'd be interested in that conversation too. Perhaps we could form a study group. It would be fascinating to compare the adaptations of our various species." Zix's body pulsed with pleasure at the invitation. "I would be honored to participate in such a group," it transmitted. "The opportunity to learn about multiple species while sharing knowledge of my own is exactly why I came to Earth." As they discussed plans for their first study session, Zix felt a tap on what approximated its shoulder. It turned to see Artie hovering nearby. "Pardon the interruption," the AI said, "but Delegate Zix has a scheduled meeting with the Dean of Extraterrestrial Affairs in 20 minutes. We should depart soon to ensure timely arrival." Zix's tendrils curled in what it hoped would be recognized as an apologetic gesture. "I'm afraid I must go," it transmitted to the group. "Perhaps we can continue this discussion later. I believe I was invited to a study session in the xenobiology lab after classes." Agreements were made and contact information exchanged. As Zix glided out of the classroom with Artie, it felt a surge of optimism. Its first class had gone well, and it seemed to be making connections with its fellow students already. "You appear to have had a positive experience," Artie observed as they made their way through the corridors. "Your bioluminescent patterns indicate satisfaction and excitement." Zix pulsed an affirmative. "It was indeed positive," it transmitted. "The class was fascinating, and the other students seem welcoming. I'm eager to learn more." "That is excellent news," Artie replied. "Positive social interactions are crucial for the success of interspecies exchange programs. However, I feel compelled to remind you of the importance of maintaining appropriate boundaries, particularly regarding the extent of luminin abilities." Zix's form dimmed slightly, remembering its careful response to the question about telepathy. "Yes, I understand. It's challenging. Luminin culture values complete openness. Keeping secrets does not come naturally to us." "A common difficulty in cross-cultural exchanges," Artie noted. "Perhaps this could be a topic of discussion in your upcoming meeting with the Dean. She has extensive experience in managing the complexities of interspecies relations." As they approached the Dean's office, Zix felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Its first class had gone well, but it knew that navigating the intricacies of life on Earth would be an ongoing challenge. There was so much to learn, So many unspoken rules and customs to understand. Artie's voice interrupted Zix's thoughts. We have arrived at the dean's office. Are you prepared for the meeting, or do you require a moment to compose yourself? Zix's tendrils waved in a gesture of determination. I am ready, it transmitted. The door to the office slid open, revealing a warmly lit room filled with an eclectic mix of objects that Zix assumed were artifacts from various worlds. Behind a large desk sat a human female with silver hair and kind eyes. She stood as Zix entered, a warm smile on her face. Welcome, Delegate Zix, she said, her voice carrying a note of genuine warmth. I'm Dean Isabel Redford. It's an honor to have you at our university. Please, make yourself comfortable. As Zix positioned itself in front of the desk, the dean took her seat, folding her hand in front of her. Now, she began, how about you tell me how your first day on Earth is going? Zix's body pulsed with a soft blue light, indicating its willingness to share. As it began to transmit its thoughts, it felt a sense of excitement about the journey ahead. This meeting, it realized, was just the beginning of what promised to be an extraordinary adventure in learning and cultural exchange. The dean listened attentively as Zix recounted its experiences so far. The arrival, the tour with Artie, the first interactions with students, and the earth sciences class. Zix's tendrils waved animatedly as it described the fascinating differences it had observed between Earth and Lumina. It sounds like you're off to a promising start, Dean Redford said with a smile. I'm particularly pleased to hear that you're already forming connections with other students. Those relationships will be invaluable as you navigate life here on Earth. Zix pulsed an affirmative. The other students have been very welcoming. It transmitted. However, I must admit to some challenges. The dean leaned forward, her expression attentive. Oh, what sort of challenges? Zix's form shimmered as it formulated its response. On Lumina, we value complete openness in our communication. The need to withhold certain information about our abilities feels unnatural. I understand the necessity, but it creates an internal conflict. Dean Redford nodded thoughtfully. I see. This is a common struggle for many of our extraterrestrial students, particularly those from telepathic species. The balance between cultural exchange and the protection of sensitive information is delicate. She paused, considering her words carefully. Zix, what you're experiencing is a fundamental aspect of diplomacy. Sometimes, full disclosure isn't in the best interest of peaceful relations. It's not about deception, but about giving different cultures time to understand each other gradually. Zix's tendrils curled inward, a gesture of deep thought. I hadn't considered it from that perspective. It transmitted. On Lumina, understanding is instantaneous due to our telepathic abilities. The idea of gradual understanding is intriguing. Exactly, the dean said, her eyes twinkling. Think of it as an opportunity to experience the human way of building relationships. It's a slower process, but many find it rewarding in its own right. As their conversation continued, touching on topics ranging from academic expectations to cultural sensitivity, Zix felt its initial unease begin to fade. Dean Redford's wisdom and understanding were reassuring, providing a new perspective on the challenges ahead. As the meeting drew to a close, the dean stood, prompting Zix to rise as well. She said, her voice warm but serious, "You're embarking on a journey that will not only enrich your own life, but also contribute to greater understanding between our worlds. There will be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of frustration, but there will also be joy, discovery, and connections that transcend the boundaries of species and planets." Zix's body glowed with a soft, pulsating light, the luminant equivalent of deep emotion. "Thank you, Dean Redford," it transmitted. "Your words give me confidence. I am honored to be part of this exchange, and I will do my best to foster understanding between our peoples." As Zix glided out of the office, Artie waiting patiently in the corridor. It felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, there would be challenges. Yes, there would be moments of confusion and culture shock, but there would also be growth, learning, and the forging of connections across the stars. The rest of the day passed in a blur of new experiences. More classes, each bringing its own set of fascinating insights and challenges. A trip to the university cafeteria, where Zix discovered the bewildering array of Earth cuisines, and the need to explain repeatedly that it absorbed nutrients through its entire body and didn't have a mouth in the conventional sense. And finally, the promised study session in the xenobiology lab. As Zix entered the lab, it was greeted by a chorus of welcomes from a diverse group of students. Humans, Arcturians, Zorlax, and even a couple of species it didn't recognize. Lena, the blue-haired human from earlier, waved it over to a table covered in data pads and holographic displays. "Zix, glad you could make it," Lena said enthusiastically. "We were just discussing comparative respiratory systems. I don't suppose luminans have anything like lungs?" Zix's tendrils waved in a negative gesture. "Not in the way you're thinking." It transmitted. "We absorb gases directly through our outer membrane, which can adjust its permeability based on our needs." This revelation sparked a flurry of questions and discussion. For the next few hours, Zix found itself at the center of a lively exchange of information, with students of all species sharing knowledge about their respective biologies. As the session wound down, Zix felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This, it realized, was why it had come to Earth. Not just to learn, but to be part of this tapestry of interstellar cooperation and understanding. As it prepared to leave, Lena approached, a slightly nervous expression on her face. "Hey, Zix," she said, "a bunch of us are going to a cultural exchange event tonight. It's a mix of music and art from different planets. Would you like to come? It might be a bit overwhelming, but I thought you might find it interesting." Zix's body pulsed with excitement. "I would be delighted," it transmitted. "Thank you for the invitation." As Zix followed Lena and the others out of the lab, it reflected on the whirlwind of its first day on Earth. There was still so much to learn, so many experiences to be had. But one thing was certain: its journey at Earth University promised to be an adventure beyond anything it had imagined. The cultural exchange event was being held in a large, open-air amphitheater on the edge of the campus. As Zix approached with its new friends, it was struck by the cacophony of sights, sounds, and smells that assaulted its senses. The night air was filled with a mix of melodies, some hauntingly beautiful, others discordant to Zix's inexperienced auditory receptors. Holographic displays showcased artwork from dozens of worlds, their colors and forms twisting and morphing in mesmerizing patterns. "Wow," Lena breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "I've been to these events before, but it never ceases to amaze me how diverse and beautiful the galaxy's cultures are." Zix pulsed in agreement, its bioluminescence shifting through a spectrum of colors in response to the sensory input. "It's overwhelming," it transmitted, but in the most wonderful way. As they made their way through the crowd, Zix noticed the variety of beings present. Humans mingled with aliens of all shapes and sizes, some recognizable from its classes, others completely foreign. The atmosphere was one of excitement and curiosity, with individuals from different species engaging in animated conversations, often assisted by translator devices or AI intermediaries. Suddenly, a haunting melody caught Zix's attention. It turned to see a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin playing what looked like a cross between a harp and a theremin. The music seemed to resonate within Zix's very essence, causing ripples to flow across its gelatinous form. "That's a siren," whispered Miguel, who had joined them for the event. "They communicate primarily through music. It's said that their melodies can convey emotions and even complex ideas more effectively than words." Zix was transfixed. On Lumina, Art forms were primarily visual or telepathic. The idea of auditory art was fascinating. As it listened, Zix found itself instinctively trying to interpret the melody, searching for meaning in the rises and falls of the alien music. Lena noticed Zix's intense focus. "Are you okay?" she asked, a note of concern in her voice. Zix's tendrils waved in a gesture of reassurance. "More than okay," it transmitted. "I'm attempting to understand." On Lumina, we share art through direct telepathic transmission of emotions and imagery. This indirect method of conveying meaning through sound waves is intriguing. I find myself wondering if I could learn to speak in this way. Lena's face lit up. "That's an amazing idea. Maybe we could set up some music lessons for you. I bet the Xenolinguistics department would be fascinated by the concept of Illuminan learning musical communication." As they continued to explore the event, Zix found itself drawn to a variety of experiences. It sampled synthesized versions of cuisine from various worlds, much to the amusement of its friends, who watched to the fascination as the food seemed to simply disappear into Zix's form. It attempted to participate in a Zorlak ritual dance, its tendrils waving in approximation of the Zorlak's undulating tentacles. And it spent a long time in front of a holographic display of Arcturian crystal sculptures, mesmerized by the way the light played through the intricate formations. Throughout the evening, Zix found itself engaging in conversations with beings from across the galaxy. It discussed the finer points of photosynthesis, with a sentient plant being from a distant jungle world. It debated the nature of time with a group of Chronosians, whose perception of temporal flow was radically different from most species. And it even attempted to explain the concept of Luminan division to a fascinated group of human biology students. As the night wore on, Zix began to notice something curious. The more it interacted with different species, the more it found itself adapting its communication style. With humans, it used more expressive bioluminescent patterns, having noticed their fondness for visual cues. With the Arcturians, it modulated its telepathic transmissions to a higher frequency, which seemed to resonate better with their crystalline forms. It was, Zix realized, becoming a cultural chameleon of sorts. "Hey, Zix," called out Trevor, the red-haired student from the Earth Sciences class. "They're about to start the interspecies choir performance. Want to watch?" Zix pulsed an affirmative and followed Trevor to a large stage area. As they found a spot to observe, a group of beings from various species began to assemble on the stage. Humans stood alongside Arcturians, Zorlaks, and several other species Zix didn't recognize. As the performance began, Zix was struck by the beautiful complexity of the sound. Each species contributed its unique vocal qualities. Human voices blended with Arcturian chimes, Zorlak whistles, and other alien vocalizations Zix couldn't even begin to describe. Yet somehow, impossibly, it all came together in a harmonious whole. "It's beautiful," Zix transmitted, its form shimmering with emotion. Lena, who had joined them, nodded in agreement. "It's a metaphor, you know," she said softly, "for what we're trying to achieve here at the university and in the broader galactic community. All these different voices coming together to create something greater than the sum of its parts." As Zix absorbed Lena's words and the choir's harmonies, it felt a profound sense of purpose wash over it. This was why the journey to Earth was so important, not just for the academic knowledge it would gain, but for these moments of connection, of bridging the vast gulfs between different forms of life and finding the harmonies that united them all. The performance concluded to enthusiastic applause and various other species, specific expressions of approval. As the crowd began to disperse, Zix noticed a small group of beings heading towards a quieter area of the amphitheater. "What's happening over there?" it asked Lena. "Oh, that's the meditation garden," Lena explained. "It's a space for quiet reflection. Some species find these events a bit overwhelming and need a place to center themselves." Zix felt a sudden urge to experience this. Would it be acceptable for me to visit this garden? it transmitted. "Of course," Lena said with a smile. "Do you want company, or would you prefer to go alone?" Zix's tendrils waved in a gesture of appreciation. "I think I'd like to experience it alone, if that's all right." "Thank you for understanding." As Zix glided towards the meditation garden, it reflected on the whirlwind of experiences it had undergone in just one day on Earth. From the nervousness of first arrival to the excitement of classes. From the challenges of navigating new social norms to the wonder of the cultural exchange. It had been a day of continuous learning and adaptation. The meditation garden was a stark contrast to the lively atmosphere of the main event. Soft, bioluminescent plants provided a gentle glow, reminding Zix of the forests of Lumina. The air was filled with a subtle, calming fragrance, and the sounds of the event were muffled, replaced by the gentle trickle of a small stream. Zix found an unoccupied spot near the stream and settled itself, allowing its form to relax and spread out slightly. As it began to process the day's events, it noticed other beings in the garden, a Cronosian floating in a temporal meditation, an Arcturian whose crystalline form was vibrating at a barely perceptible frequency, and a human sitting cross-legged with eyes closed. In this moment of quiet reflection, Zix realized something profound. Despite the vast differences between the species it had encountered, differences in biology, in culture, in ways of perceiving the universe, there was a common thread that united them all. A desire to understand, to connect, to find meaning in the vast cosmos they all shared. As Zix allowed this realization to sink in, it felt a sense of peace and purpose. Yes, there would be challenges ahead. Misunderstandings were inevitable, and the path of interspecies cooperation was rarely smooth. But in moments like these, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy all seeking common ground, Zix felt certain that the journey would be worth every obstacle. A soft chime sounded, signaling the end of the quiet period in the meditation garden. As Zix prepared to rejoin its friends and return to its quarters, it made a silent promise to itself. It would embrace every opportunity this exchange program offered, not just to learn, but to contribute to the grand experiment of galactic cooperation. Gliding back to the main area, Zix spotted Lena and the others waiting, their faces, and other species, equivalent features, lit up as they saw Zix approach. "Welcome back," Lena said warmly. "How was the meditation garden?" Zix's form pulsed with a soft, contented glow. It was illuminating, it transmitted. "Thank you all for including me in this event. I feel I've learned more about galactic culture in one night than I could have in weeks of classes." Miguel grinned. "Well, get used to it. This is just the beginning." As the group made their way back towards the residential area, chatting animatedly about their favorite parts of the event, Zix felt a surge of excitement for what the future held. Its first day on Earth had been a roller coaster of new experiences, challenges, and discoveries. And tomorrow promised even more. Zix's tendrils waved in a gesture of contentment as it absorbed the chatter of its new friends. It had come to Earth seeking knowledge, but it was finding so much more: friendship, understanding, and a place in a diverse, complex, and endlessly fascinating galactic community. As they reached the point where they would part ways for the night, Lena turned to Zix. "So, same time tomorrow for study group." Zix pulsed an affirmative. "I wouldn't miss it," it transmitted. "Sleep well, friends, and thank you for a truly extraordinary day." As Zix entered its quarters and settled into its nutrient pool for the night cycle, its mind buzzed with the day's experiences. It knew that every day wouldn't be as eventful or enlightening as this one, but it was ready for whatever challenges and discoveries lay ahead. In the soft, bioluminescent glow of its room, Zix composed a brief message to be transmitted back to Lumina. First day on Earth complete. Experiencing profound learning and cultural exchange. Humans and other species welcoming and fascinating. Much to learn, but also much to contribute. This journey promises to be even more significant than we imagined. Zix, Earth University delegate. As Zix sent the message and drifted into its rest cycle, little did it know that its first day was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. In the coming weeks, it would face challenges that would test the limits of its adaptability, from navigating the complexities of human social customs to confronting interstellar political tensions that threaten the exchange program. Zix will find itself caught between loyalty to Lumina and its growing attachment to Earth, forced to make decisions that could alter the course of interstellar relations. As the mysteries surrounding the true nature of the exchange program deepen, one question looms large in Zix's mind. In this vast, complex universe, where does a single Luminan truly belong? Zix's adventure at Earth University is just beginning, and the galaxy will never be the same.